Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Leo Be the Lion Show. Boom, boom. It's the Leo Be the Lion Show. Boom, boom. Gonna tell you what you need to know. Alright, let's get into it. I'm excited to talk about these two issues that I have on my plate today to bring to you guys. We're gonna get to it, but a word from these sponsors. First sponsor, YOLO Fit. YOLO Fitted. Yo, if you ever need some good quality athletic gear at leisure, check out YOLO Fitted. You can check it out on Instagram, Twitter, and they have their own website. So go out there and check it out. I don't get paid for it. I'm not a paid spokesperson, but I just wanted to put it out there, some marketing for my best friend's sister's business out there. And YOLO Fitted. I have the YOLO Fitted socks and the hoodie. So keep it going, guys. First thing I want to talk about today is the Dolphins roster. I want to have a series of shows where I can bring you the whole Dolphins roster, but I'm not going to get into all of it today. I just want to give you a little sneak peek. We're going to get into 3 units on the Dolphins roster. We're going to talk about the secondary, which everybody knows are the corners, the safeties, and then we're going to get into the tight ends, because I think that's an important part of the team that the media and the detractors of the Dolphins are really missing, are the tight ends. Then we're going to talk about the D linemen. Now, most football purists would tell you winning and losing starts up front, whether the offensive line or defensive line. So when I want to get into this, I want to just bring to you why I think the Dolphins D line is somewhat underrated. There's 3 guys that come to mind when I think of the Dolphins D line and why they're going to be dominant this year and take the Dolphins to the next step. So the first reason is, first football player, because he's a darn good football player, is Christian Wilkins. Homegrown talent. We drafted him out of Clemson. He has been a game wrecker from the beginning. Yeah, he got injured. He missed a couple of games early on in his career, but he's been very reliable, and he's been a constant force up front. And he can play almost every down. He has to rotate in with the rotations that the Dolphins have, because I think that's one of the strengths of the Dolphins D-line too, is that they're pretty deep at the D-line. So they can have rotations of players come in and out. But Christian Wilkins, he's strong up front. He can play any of the defensive line positions because he's that kind of a hybrid defensive lineman where he can rush the passer, but the Dolphins most of the time need him to stuff the run and hold up the front of the pocket so that the ends can do their work. So the next defensive lineman that I want to talk about is, you probably guessed it, we extended him this year, and that's Emmanuel Ogbah. Emmanuel Ogbah is one of, if not the best defensive lineman the Dolphins have, in my opinion. He came over, and ever since he's come to the Dolphins, he's had new life. His career's breathed new life. He was a middling defensive end, and people weren't sure what he was going to do, and he's turned himself into probably, he should be Pro Bowler. So we're going to see, and I really think that Emmanuel Ogbah, he had a great year last year, he had a great year 2 years ago, and I think he's going to just keep giving it up and keep improving his skill level, because when the Dolphins are able to get pressure on the quarterback, it makes the other unit that I'm going to talk about on the defense today, the secondary, that much better when you already have Pro Bowlers on the secondary. So now I just want to talk about one more defensive lineman before we get into the other units. And that defensive lineman is Zach Seiler, or Sealer. I don't know how you say his name, but I'll tell you what, he's going to make those other quarterbacks squeal like a seal. So I might call him Zach Sealer, or I might call him Zach Seiler. If you want to let me know how to pronounce it for Zach Seiler, Zach Sealer, if you ever see this video, let me know how to pronounce it in the comments. I'll definitely change my pronunciation based on what you say because I respect that. So for now, I'm going to call him Zach Seiler because that's what I think his name is. So Zach Seiler is a great defensive lineman that came out of nowhere. He was able to I think we picked him up off free agency, and nobody really gave him a shot. He was very underrated, and he was able to disrupt the middle of the defensive line. He's a great run stopper, and Pro Football Focus, I think, ranked him as the seventh ranked D lineman, interior D lineman in the league. So, and I think actually better than that. I can't exactly remember. So, it's important to remember that the Dolphins don't get a lot of love. They're all the way down in Miami. They're at the bottom of the map. People don't talk about them as much. If you look on SportsCenter is based in Connecticut. They have SportsCenter LA. They don't really be talking about the Dolphins. So the mainstream national media doesn't see the Dolphins as much as Leo B. the Lion would being down in South Florida, hearing all the rumbles. I keep my ear to the street. I'm trying to find out what's going on with the Dolphins, trying to see, okay, I'm not a beat writer, but every day I'm listening to the local radio. Every day I'm trying to see what some articles are writing by the local Palm Beach Post and the Sun Sentinel, trying to see what they're looking like. So this defensive line, if they gel together to this year, my prediction of the Dolphins being Super Bowl contenders is going to come true. And when I say Super Bowl contenders, that means that the Dolphins may not make the Super Bowl, but they will be at least, if not the division winner, they'll be the top wild card seed and get to the AFC Championship. So now that we've talked about the D-line and how important they are to the Dolphins, we're going to switch over to the secondary because it's natural that we go from up front and then we work our way backwards. I want to save the linebackers for another day because I think that's the enigma. If we don't know what we're going to get out of the linebackers on the Dolphins, I'd rather talk about the D-line. We know what the D-line is. We know the D-line is strong. Talk about the secondary. We know the secondary has Pro Bowlers on it. They have high-paying Pro Bowlers, a couple young safeties. We're going to get to that right now. But first, I just want to say we'll bring the linebackers to you. Leo B. the Lion Show. We'll do another episode on the linebackers and the offensive line combined because I feel like those two units are the wild cards, and I think that deserves its own segment. So, as for the secondary of the Dolphins, it takes a strong team, a deep receiving core, and a deep tight end core to be able to beat the Dolphins secondary. Because when you have Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, Brandon Jones, Javon Holland as your starting four defensive backs, you're in trouble. The other team is in trouble because they both of the corners play man-to-man and can play zone. They can play a cover two. Xavier Howard is a Pro Bowl cornerback. Byron Howard is one of the most sure tackling corners, and they know how to cover. So when you have them out there on the team's two best receivers, and then you have the safeties that can not only come up and stuff the run, because if you want that strong safety to come up against the line to add that 8-man in the box and be able to stuff the run, or be able to, when they're running the strong side, you want that strong safety to be able to come down and be able to, if they get around the edge, they get around the defensive end, the running back does, or they throw a swing pass, or they throw a short wide receiver screen, you want to be able to have that safety that can come down if the corner is blocked, if the linebacker gets sucked in, if the defensive end can't set the edge, then you want that safety to come down and be the one guy that can stop that run. And you want him to be able to be a great tackler, a sure tackler, and that's what you're going to get out of Javon Holland. Brandon Jones and Javon Holland, they're ball hawks in addition to being able to stuff the run. They're sure tacklers, and they're young, so they're on rookie contract deals. So we're doing a great job in our secondary, the Dolphins are, and being able to get young guys in the draft. Yeah, we signed Byron Jones. Yeah, we extended Xavier Howard, but he's a homegrown talent. We got him as well out of Baylor. then we're able to not worry about the secondary. Now remember how I said the defensive line helps the secondary? Well, it's the same, it's like a symbiotic relationship. You don't know if it's the chicken or the egg or the chicken. It's the D-line or the secondary or the D-line, because if the secondary can cover, it gives the D-line a chance to get to the quarterback. But if the D-line can get to the quarterback, it gives the secondary a chance to cover. So, I mean, it always goes, like, that's the cool part about football. It's so, everybody has to do their job, and if all 11 guys are doing their job in the unit, chances are they're going to be successful, because it only takes that one guy to not just do his job, and then the quarterback's able to find it, and the quarterback's able to get it to the receiver, or the receiver's able to be open, or a myriad of things can happen where the defense could be unsuccessful. But what I'm saying is that the Dolphins, with a strong D-line and one of the best secondaries in the league, I would say a top 5 secondary in the league, can be a Super Bowl tender, because that can be a Super Bowl defense. Stay tuned for my future episodes when I talk about the linebackers and see what it will take for the linebackers to do this year so that the Dolphins can really truly be a Super Bowl contending defense. Now, let's switch sides of the ball for a second and go to the offensive side of the ball. If I was able to tell you who's the most underrated player on the Dolphins, and the offensive skill player on the Dolphins, who would you say? You might say, you might say one of the running backs. You might say a wide receiver. But no, I think it's the tight ends. Because people talk about Tyreek Hill, people talk about Jalen Waddle, how fast they are, how they can take the ball at the line of scrimmage and go 80 yards for a touchdown. They can just burn the team, and they can juke, and they can catch. Well, if those teams are studying and game planning for the 2 receivers on the outside, guess who can take advantage of the middle? The tight end. That's right. Man, we have one of the best, most underrated tight ends in the league, and his name is Mike Gesicki. People forget that he came out of Penn State in the combine and had the best 40 time, the best bench press, and the best cone drill out of any tight end. So that means he's athletic. He already has the athletic build. We've seen what he could do when the ball's put in the right spot. He can catch anything. His catch radius is huge. He jumps, he can catch with one hand. Oh, he's like 6'5", 6'6", so he's got the height. And so if you're worried about stopping Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, all the other players, guess who's going to get off? Mike Gesicki, or Mike Gesicki. I'm just messing with y'all. So let's go Dolphins. I really think that the Dolphins have another tight end, Durham Smythe, and Mike Gesicki, and they still have Hunter Smith, who's another 3rd tight end. So they have a deep tight end core. And one more thing I want to mention about Mike Gesicki. He's an underrated blocker. He's going to be able to help out the tight ends, or help out the offensive linemen, chip away at the ends, chip away at the outside linebackers, be able to give Tua a little bit more time. And so that's it for the roster breakdown today about the Dolphins. And we talked about the secondary, we talked about the tight ends, we talked about the D-line. We talked about how the D-line can really set the tone for the rest of the teams, this rest of the defensive unit, and contribute to the defensive unit being a Super Bowl defensive unit by being able to get to the quarterback, and being able to stop the run. And those 3 guys, Christian Wilkins, Emmanuel Ogbah, Zach Seiler, those 3 guys, I think, will be the 3 key important guys on the defensive line for the Dolphins this year. Now, when it comes to the secondary, we'll be able to have Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. Of course, they're going to do their job. But I want to see how those rookies hold up. Brandon Jones, yeah, it's going to be his 3rd year. Okay, he was a sophomore last year. And then Javon Highland, this is going to be his 2nd year. So I really want to see if they fall off like a Big Mac topping, or if they're able to improve their game and jump up their skill level. And I really think they will, because they're going to be going against Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, Raheem Mostert, in practice every day. So when you have to go against those burners, those speedsters, those high-flying catchers, when you have to go against them every day in practice, you have no choice but to get better because you learn what those guys are doing, what those tendencies are. You learn, when you're running against somebody who's a burner, who's so fast, and then you go and play against somebody slower than him, it's going to be easier to react. That's what I think. So I think it's going to contribute to the Dolphins being great. And as for the tight ends, we just know that a tight end can be a wild card. And what I want to say is that Tyreek Hill was able to give Travis Kelce, being in Kansas City all those years, Tyreek Hill was able to give Travis Kelce a little bit more space in the middle because Tyreek Hill was taking the top off the defense. Tyreek Hill was widening the defense out. So there was more room in the middle for Travis Kelce to work, more room for him to be able to get those little seam routes down the middle where Patrick Mahomes could just flick his wrist and put the ball 30 yards. So I really think that can assist Tua by helping guys stay open. And now I just want to switch gears. We talked about the Dolphins roster. We had the breakdown of the Dolphins roster, part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 of the Realignment the Lions show coming up in a few days. We'll talk about the other Dolphins roster units, like I said. But now I want to switch over to news of the week. USC and UCLA just announced on Wednesday that they are going to move to the Big Ten Conference. Now, this is something that I'm disgusted by personally, but I'll tell you why. I kind of knew this was going to come about when I was in grad school at FAU, Go Owls. I had the opportunity to get my MBA and at the same time talk to other grad students, other MBAs that were in the sports business program. And one of my friends, Omar, was taking the sports college NCAA sports marketing class. And what they found was what Jim Reardon, rest in peace, the late Jim Reardon was able to show them in the class was that the NCAA. Well, I was in grad school from 2013 to 2015, and 2013 was before the playoffs. So, what the NCAA had in their bylaws was they were planning from the start to have a football college playoff. Their playoff was going to be able to show them, allow those Power 5 conference, which at the time was the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the Big 12. At that time, those 5 conferences wanted to institute a playoff scenario where those conferences were the only eligible parties to be able to compete for a national championship. Now, as we've seen since that era, since 2013 to 2015, we've seen that is the truth, save for Cincinnati getting in last year because they finally, under enough pressure, let somebody in. But if you look in the bylaws of the NCAA college football playoff, it says in the college football playoff bylaws that no team besides those Power 5 conferences and Notre Dame, don't forget about Notre Dame, no team besides those Power 5 conferences and Notre Dame are eligible for the college football playoff. So I just wanted to preface what I want to say about the super conferences with that, so that you know where it's kind of coming from. So I kind of knew this was coming. I called into the radio whenever they're saying, oh, why can't UCF get in? Why doesn't Cincinnati get in? Why doesn't this team get in? Why didn't that team? Oh, because they're not eligible. So it never really was a thing. They just have to make it a marketing. They just have to go on ESPN and say, oh, is Cincinnati going to get in? Is UCF going to get in? They have to say that so that they can sell advertising dollars. It's a non-story. There's no chance that they're going to get in except for last year when Cincinnati got in. So they must have tried to change the rules, or at least the college football playoff and the college football playoff committee decided to, it's too much pressure. Nobody really knows the bylaws. Let's just let Cincinnati in and see what happens. So this brings me to my main point. How is USC and UCLA. Now, mostly USC because UCLA, yeah, they're nice in basketball, but they're not really nothing in they haven't won a national champ. I think they won one national championship, and I'm trying to remember when. It's either like early, like in the 30s or 40s, or like in the 80s. I can't remember which one. Don't hold me to it, but I want to get to USC. USC is the powerhouse of the Pac-12. We all know that. They're the blue blood of the Pac-12. They are what drives the dollars in the Pac-12. So with USC leaving and UCLA leaving, they are taking the LA market, the number one, if not the number two media market in the country with them to the Big Ten. The Big Ten may be able to finally compete in terms of advertising dollars, in terms of media rights dollars, in terms of viewership dollars with the SEC. Because we know SEC is king. They have the biggest contract with ESPN. They have the SEC network. Each team, you would say, can get $100 million for their advertising every year because they have the partnership with ESPN, let's just say. Whereas conferences like the Big Ten in the past, conferences like the Pac-12, conferences like the Big 12 haven't been able to draw those same media dollars, and so those same schools would only get $25 million a year in media dollars. So when you compare those numbers and you roll the machine down the road several years, $75 million a year adds up as a difference. Adds up to recruiting the five-star teams and not five-star players. That's why the Alabamas of the world, as long as Nick Saban's there, Alabama's going to be relevant. And I'm not sure anything in the landscape can change that. But let's just talk about how these conference movements, Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, how USC, UCLA is going to the Big Ten, how this is going to hurt college football. We see it's all about the money. Yeah, it's all about the greed. And we understand that that's why they're moving. There's no competitive reason to move except to get more money. Because if you move into the conference, if you're USC and you go into the conference, into the Big Ten, and now you have, instead of having 4 contenders every year in the Big Ten, let's just say Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin. Let's just say those 4. I'm probably leaving Michigan State out because they're up and down, what have you. So you have those 4 contenders. Then you have doggone USC and UCLA coming in. USC, now there's 5. Did I say Ohio State? Yeah, I think I said Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin. Anyway, so now you have USC coming in. Y'all are just it's gonna be a war of attrition. How is somebody gonna get to the college football playoff with 2 losses? Everybody's gonna beat everybody. If you always have to play the strongest guys, they're always gonna beat everybody. That's why it's so tough in the SEC. A team, if Alabama goes undefeated in the SEC, you know they're going to the college football playoff. But now with Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC, think about how hard it's gonna be. Alabama, on any given year, Ole Miss. Let's just say the 2 best SEC teams in the past 20 years are, in my opinion, Florida, Alabama. Georgia, yeah, they got 1 national championship. Alabama has 2. Florida has 2 national championships. So let's just say that. So Florida, Georgia, Alabama. Then you have, I'd say the next tier is in the SEC. You have Ole Miss, teams like Arkansas, teams like South Carolina, Tennessee that has fallen off, but in any given year they can kind of like rise up and be competitive. Mississippi State. But then you bring Texas and Oklahoma in, and now you have these 2 super conferences. You're going to lop off the entire East Coast, which is the ACC, and you're going to lop off the entire Pac-12, which is the Western Coast, and you're basically going to say the Big Ten and the SEC are just going to fight for 4 playoff spots at this point, and you're just going to say those 4 teams are basically, since those are the best, most prestigious conferences, those teams deserve to have 2 teams in each playoff, and it's just going to be just the Big Ten, the SEC show. And it's almost like Coke and Pepsi, almost like Honda versus Toyota, you know, Mercedes versus BMW. They have just everything's consolidated into the two big guys and the two parties. You know, doesn't that sound familiar? Everything's consolidated into the two things, and then now you just, it's kind of watered down football to me. Yeah, it's going to be like, oh, these are the best of the best playing each other. But when every year there can't be like an undefeated team, you're going to see teams in the playoffs with 2-3 losses, because there's going to be those teams where it's like Alabama can't go undefeated when they have to play Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, South Carolina, all like. They were able to go undefeated, but when you add Oklahoma and Texas, especially when Texas just signed Arch Manning just committed to Texas, and Quinn Ewers, the #1 quarterback before Arch Manning, the year before, committed to Texas, you will see how watered down this football. It's not going to be a watered down football product. It's just going to be the records aren't going to be as good. It's going to be kind of like weird, like. Why is a team 12-2? You know what I'm saying? Getting into the college football playoff. Oh, it's like, oh, because they're from the SEC and they had to play. They played a hard-fought game against Texas and then they played a hard-fought game against Oklahoma. But they would have never played before if Oklahoma and Texas stayed in the Big 12. So I just don't agree with it, because I really think it's going to hurt college football. It's going to hurt the competitive balance of college football. Dang, I feel like Marco Rubio with my parched throat. I need to go reach for some water. But anyway, I just think that I believe that college football is better when there's 5 conferences fighting it out for 4 playoff spots, or 5 conferences where each 5 conferences would have a champion, and then if there's 6 playoff teams, it would be the wild card would go on the 6th team. Or you would say 5, if it was an 8 playoff team format, you could have 5 Power 5 conference champions, and then you could have 3 at-large bids. But I just think that that's a better way to do it. UCF is going to show you how prestigious they can make the Big 12, but I really want everyone out there to, and if you disagree with me, please comment in the comments, because I want to know how you think about college football. Yeah, there's a lot of SEC homers, there's a lot of Big 10 homers, and I can respect that, you know, because you guys are kind of like the best conference, to be honest. But what's the point of just being the big dog if you can't hunt? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the point of being the big dog if you're just going to sit around all day because you know you're the best conference and you're going to get 2 teams in there. Each team is going to get $100 million, and you're just literally just going through the seasons just to get the money. Like, you're not going for the seasons to try and win. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's not really like what sports is about. Sports should be about the sportsmanship. And yeah, you can make your money on the side. Yeah, you can do your NIL dollars and get your money. Get the bag, secure the bag. But when it's like hand over foot, where it's like no matter what kind of product we put out there, we're still going to get paid $200 million every year, and we couldn't care less about what kind of product we're going to put out there because we're the biggest, baddest on the block. What you're going to do about it is kind of like a cheap way to run your show. It's a cheap way to run the product, because football, sports, really, it's about entertainment. And yeah, just because you have the market cornered, doesn't mean you can give any product. Doesn't mean you can just, put lipstick on a pig and say, yay, this is a beautiful woman over here. Like, you can't just do that, like, because eventually the consumer's going to know, and they're going to vote with their dollars. And they're going to vote with their feet. Like, I'm not as excited for college football this year, knowing that USC and then we're going to go to the Big Ten and Oklahoma, and then we're going to go to the SEC. It's kind of like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Guess what? Guess who's going to be in the playoff this year? Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and if Michigan's good, they'll be in there, or it'll be another Big Ten team. And it's just going to be like, okay, unless some team comes out of nowhere and goes undefeated and blows out every other team, because they won't say that their conference is prestigious enough. Clemson would have to go undefeated. Florida State would have to go undefeated. Miami would have to go undefeated in the ACC. So this football theme show just made me want to talk about it. I really love college football. I love the NFL. And I just want to see the best product that can go out there. Yeah, it's great players. It's great athletes. But when it feels like all of it is just for the dollar, it's kind of takes the fun out of it for me. So this has been Leo B. the Lion signing off. I hope everyone has a great day, and remember to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your feedback. Peace.